Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Hockey Writers Fantasy Forecheck podcast. As always, I am your host, Jacob Strozyk, joined by my fellow Atlantic Division basement dweller.
Jacob Billington, as always. I appreciate there not being a pause looking for a compliment there this time.
No, because we're both down in the dumps, so we're just going to accept what we are and deal with it on a weekly basis at this point.
Absolutely.
Uh, we're going to be going through these this week's fantasy trends. A couple of fun ones this week. There's a few big names and a few smaller names to pay attention to, so it should be good. But before we get started, we have our question of the week. At this point of the season, are you buying more on uptrend goalies or uptrend position players when you're looking through, whether it be for a trade or a waiver wire? What are you buying on more at this point in the year?
So the only league I really pay much attention to is the Hockey Writers League. I'm in two other ones, but they're just kind of they're free leagues. Hard to invest in those. Um, but right now in the Hockey Writers one, I'm probably have the best goaltending in our whole league. So definitely not looking at goaltenders with Andre Vasilevsky back off of LTIR. But right about now, I'm looking in general. I'm looking for whoever's going to upgrade my team. So it all depends on how you have it built. Um, Now is a good time to really look at who is getting those hits and blocks this year. Because that changes every year. You got the same guys that are the top five every year, but outside of that, sometimes they just play a different role with a new coach. So those kind of like secondary stats, really important to look at.
Yeah, I find myself looking more towards the defensive end as far as out of the three major positions go, because forwards are always going to get a couple of goals here and there. You're always going to get that offense chipping in, regardless of if you're paying attention to the waiver wire or not. It's really hard to be stifled for goals and assists completely. So I find myself leaning more towards the defensive side just because there's a lot more versatility on the back end and getting those extra categories or getting those couple of extra bonus points as opposed to maybe a goaltender that's having a minor hot streak but isn't going to play in the next probably 4 or 5 games if they're a backup or something.
Yeah. I completely agree. Now I have a question for you.
Throw it. What you got?
I want you to rank my trade, or sorry, grade my trade.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So this was I made two deals that were bundled into where I started and where I finished with. So
Mm-hmm.
I traded Brian Rust and Rasmus Ristolainen, who was still on LTIR. He just played his first game. I traded those two for Carter Hart and Vince Dunn.
Okay.
So I felt pretty good about that. Or no, sorry. I traded those two for Carter Hart. And then I traded
Okay.
Carter Hart and Vince Dunn for Adam Fox and Devin Levi. So I turned Brian Rust, Vince Dunn, and Rasmus Ristolainen into Adam Fox and Devin Levi. What do you think?
You can't go wrong with somebody like Adam Fox. So
Yeah.
the fact that you traded a handful of, I want to call them mid-tier players,
Yeah.
but as far as fantasy is concerned, they are middle tier players.
Vince Dunn's having a really good year.
He is definitely, but he's not Adam Fox.
No.
Having that superstar caliber defender, that top three defenseman, is absolutely worth it. Levi might bite you a little bit right now just because he's not doing too hot and Buffalo is kind of in the crapper. But
And I
if he
didn't
gets up
get
to speed,
yeah, and I didn't get Levi to be one of my goaltenders because I have
right,
Ilya Sorokin and Andre Vasilevsky. That's just if I need a game at the end of the week for whatever reason, I can do
right.
that. But now I've got quite the four-headed monster. I've got those two goalies, Adam Fox and Elias Pettersson. Pretty happy with that.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna give you a rock solid A minus for your trade.
Yes, I like it.
Because the only reason I wouldn't give it a solid A is because of the fact that you gave up that many players as
Yeah,
far as conglomerate level production
yeah,
and what you're going to get out of the aggregate with them. You probably lose a little bit of value, but long term, you're looking at Fox just shooting up, and that's what really counts.
Yeah, I really wish that we were doing a dynasty league. I think we definitely need to start one next year, because that's so much fun.
Yeah, we'll have to get a smaller group together for a
Yeah,
dynasty league. I think we'll get the hardcore guys. Maybe I'd say a group of 10 would be
yeah,
good for a league like that, and then we can really dive into the nitty gritty of it and
yeah.
torment each other on a yearly basis.
Yes.
All right, that's a good start. Let's do some uptrend players. I have a total of 4. What do you got on your list?
I've got three. I'll start off with Quentin Byfield. Thank you
Love
for
it.
dropping him last week.
I had
Uh,
no choice. I had to bring Tuck back from IR.
yeah, no, he's one of those guys that he's going to be one of the first that you drop, but I'm also telling everybody to pick him up right now. On Yahoo, he's only rostered at 39%. He's on, I have it written here. He's got 12 points in his last 11 games. He has arrived to the NHL. He's doing fantastic. I think so far this year, he's only finished one game with a negative rating, and he gets 2 to 4 shots a game. He's just fantastic. So I'm a huge fan of Quentin Byfield. So more than happy to pick him up off waivers.
Yeah, it was really painful having to decide who I was going to pick up, who I was going to drop in kind of my decision making process of who I was bringing up because I had to bring back Tuck, but it was between him and Schwartz, which in hindsight I made the wrong decision. But you can't predict the future, and you can only do what you have in front of you. I like Byfield. We've talked about him, I think, twice now
I think so.
on the show and how well he's doing. So it just continues to show how good his uptrend is and how well I would say the Kings in general are playing is definitely a byproduct of what he is contributing fantasy wise and in real life too.
Yep.
I like it. I'm going to keep it out west. I'm going to talk about a big boy. We're going to do Lawson Crouse
Okay.
from the Arizona Coyotes. He's playing some big time minutes, and he has 5 goals in his last 6 games, and he's also on a 3-game goal streak. Now, what I like about Crouse is he's sneakily offensively good, but he's always getting peripherals. He is throwing hits. He is getting a decent amount of blocks, but he's always throwing hits. So what's even better is he's split between left and right wing, so you can put him on either side if you have that scenario coming up for you.
Yep.
But he's not rostered at a super high rate. You can absolutely still pick him up. He's a hot, cold type of player. He's not going to consistently be throwing up a goal a game or a goal every other game. Yeah. But he's good for probably about 25-ish goals, I'd say, on the high end by the end of the year. And that's something that's worth having on your roster, especially if you're getting hits.
Yeah, and like we talked about this before the season started, that I love the Arizona roster right now. There's just so much offense to kind of go around. You don't really have that true superstar. You could maybe throw Clayton Keller in there soon, but right now not quite. But you have Logan Cooley. We talked about Dylan Genther, but he's not in the NHL right now. You have there's just so many guys, and so no matter who he's going to play with in that top 9, he's got somebody, even like Jason Zucker or whoever it's going to be, right? So he's always got some good line mates to hit the ice with, and that's a huge benefit for him and anybody that's holding him in fantasy, just because he's going to get those assists. There are some goal scorers on Arizona, and I think I predicted, I have it in writing in our conversation somewhere, that Arizona is going to be the 9th team in the West. That was my prediction. I'm sticking to it. Just wanted to throw that in there.
I believe it. Arizona, we said at the start of the year, Arizona is secretly good, and they're very underrated as far as the roster is concerned. So to see a good amount of fantasy performances out of a good, I would say a decent number of these Arizona players is absolutely, it's not shocking to me at this point. No. It's not necessarily expected all the time, but it's not shocking to me either.
Yeah.
You got another one, or do you want me to roll? I have another Arizona player I can roll into.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Partner them up.
Yeah, I also have Connor Ingram on this list as a goaltender because he has just been on fire as far as, goaltending in general goes. But he's really taken over that starter mantle from Vejmelka, which is a bit of a disappointment on one level. But at the same time, it's nice to see him getting that momentum and stepping up to the plate and getting up to speed. He just had a shutout the other night, which I believe is his second of the season. So if you have the opportunity and your goaltending depth is not fantastic right now, Ingram is a great choice. His roster rate is very quickly rising. So before somebody else does, I very much recommend giving him a pickup.
Yeah, you should absolutely be picking him up because he, like you said, he is taking it over from Vajmelka, which, like you said, is very disappointing. I love Vajmelka, and I was really hoping that he would have a huge year. And season's not over yet. I mean, we look at Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner, and we're like, season might be over for them. But when you look at a guy like Vajmelka, the expectations aren't like sky high. So he could earn it back, but as of, for right now, absolutely pick up Connor Ingram. He is the go-to guy right now. He's got the coach's trust, and there's he's doing everything that a goalie needs to do.
It's not like that shutout was against some rinky-dink team. He shut out Vegas.
Yeah,
that's a top-tier team, so he's playing supremely well. Those are my two Arizona players. What do you got next?
Okay, I'm gonna go to Vladislav Nemesnikov over in Winnipeg.
Okay.
He's been having a very, very quietly good season. He's playing in the second line center spot. That's probably going to change when Gabe Vilardi comes back. But as of right now, like he's doing what you need him to do. He's got 6 points in his last 5 games. He's only rostered at he's got 7 points in his last 6 games, and he's on a 6 game point streak. And he's only rostered at 3%, center right wing. So you can kind of slot him in at center or on the wing, depending on where you have the availability. It's just he's doing everything, right? And so he doesn't get a ton of blocks and hits, but he is going to get on that board for you. He is a good defensive forward. If you would have told me a year and a half ago that we were talking about Connor Ingram and Vladislav Nemesnikov as two fantasy pickups, I would have spit in your face. But here we are talking about it.
That's the beautiful thing about fantasy, though, isn't it? Those random players that have that big week or that big month, and they can really make a difference on your roster. And Nemesnikov is a fantastic example of somebody like that because he's been bouncing around the league for a little bit. He played. I got his team list pulled up here. He's played for the Lightning, then the Rangers, then the Senators for half a season, then the Avalanche, then the Red Wings, then the Stars, then the Lightning again, and now he's on his second year on the Jets, and he's producing fairly well.
Yeah.
It's got, what does it say? It's a total of 11 points in 19 games. He's a plus 12.
Yep. He's fantastic defensively.
Like he's doing absolutely spectacular. So somebody like that can really make a difference in your week. Those couple of extra bonus points, probably 10, 15 extra bonus points in your points league, definitely makes a difference. So I see no problem with him being an uptrend player whatsoever.
Yeah, and through 17 games, he's got 11 hits and 13 blocks. Like that's not nothing. That adds to it.
That's free points.
Exactly.
That's
you're not going to him
free
for those. But right now, it's definitely worth picking him up. And he's got 28 shots. That's not bad.
Yeah, 28 shots, which he's on pace to come close to, if not break, his shots personal record, which is just under 120. So if he's shooting more, that's only good for him, and it's only good for fantasy owners too.
Yeah.
I'll also do a kind of no name-ish, not no name, but younger player. Phil Kurashev on Chicago. He's been doing fairly well, playing on the top line, and he's meshing really well with Bedard. His points mostly come in the form of assists, which is absolutely fine. He's benefiting from being that playmaker for a shooter like Bedard, but he is ultimately getting the points. And he's definitely not somebody that's going to be at a high roster rate. So a couple of extra points similar to Nemesnikov, it's the same basic situation.
Yeah, and Chicago's got that kind of swagger with them right now. Obviously, nobody knows what's going on with Corey Perry. That's a very interesting situation that I'm following pretty closely. But like you got Nick Foligno, who everybody was like, oh, $4 million a year. Sure, that's a bit much, but look at him. He's like the face of the Chicago Blackhawks right now. Obviously, Connor Bedard is, but like in the media, you see Nick Foligno talking to everybody. So like the vibes there are fantastic. And Kurashev is taking advantage of a depleted roster and taking advantage of an opportunity to play on the top line with Connor Bedard. And it's working fantastic.
Yeah, he earned the spot and he's making the most of it. That's what really counts in that scenario.
Yeah.
I only have one more. I think you said you have one more too.
Yeah, I got two. I had another one pop into the head. So
Okay, go.
I'll go Jake Neighbors.
Okay.
He's been doing really good for the Blues. He's got another 2 goals tonight as we're recording this right now. So he's up to 4 goals in his last 5 games, and he's got points in all 5 of those games. He's he's just doing everything right, and he's on fire. So I'm not super confident it will last long. But if you're making a trade or something and you are doing a 2-for-1 deal, and you just need somebody to fill in for the week or maybe a couple of weeks, I would absolutely pick him up. Like I said, I don't think it'll stick, but for the next month or so, I'd be pretty confident in his play.
Yeah, I got his stats pulled up here. Do you know what his shooting percentage is off the top of your head or no?
I don't probably something stupid like 60%.
Uh, Not quite, but 28%. He's currently
Yeah,
shooting at 28%, which, like you said, not sustainable. But for the time being, while the puck's going in the back of the net, now's the time to grab him. Now's the time to think before somebody else does. Hey, I need some goal support this week.
yeah,
Definitely a great option because he only has 1 assist on the year. But while the goals are going in, 100%
yeah.
pick him up. Who's your other one that popped in while you're
Uh, Eric
fresh?
Eric Gustafson. I think we already talked about him, but I'm not sure.
I think we
Adam
glossed over him, but go ahead.
Yeah, Adam Fox hit an LTIR, who we already talked about. He should be back fairly soon, I would say within 2 weeks. But Eric Gustafson took over the top power play unit and has been making the most of every opportunity on there. I got his stats right here. He's got 14 points on the year so far, and he makes $800,000. I bet you Toronto is very upset they spent $4 million on John Klingberg and let him walk. I don't know where it came from. This isn't Eric Gustafson of the past few years. Obviously, he had a fantastic year in Chicago. I think he had 60 something, 62 points, I believe, like 5 years ago. And then he just kind of fell off. But he's doing fantastic in New York, and I love to see it. He's only rostered at 36%, and he's got 10 points over the last month. That's very, very good. So I would absolutely try and pick him up if you get the chance.
Yeah, he took advantage of the situation that he was put into and
Yeah.
he stepped up to the occasion. And it's really interesting to see how many players can do that when they're given the right opportunity, that they
Yeah.
can step into it and be a high-end player. My favorite example of when it ever happened was when William Karlsson ended up going to Vegas,
Yeah.
because prior to that, on the Ducks and on the Blue Jackets, he was stifled, couldn't do anything. But I remember watching the kid and being like, he's got so much he could offer if he just was given the right opportunity. And then,
Yeah.
bam, goes to Vegas, scores 40 goals. And I was like, see,
Yeah.
it's so great. And
And that
Gustin is a great example of it right now, too.
and you basically just explained Anthony Duclair before he got traded to
Yep.
Ottawa. Like,
Yep.
same kind of player. Absolutely. And I think if Gustafson can really find a home in New York, I think there's absolutely a spot for him to run the second power play unit. Obviously, you've got Fox and Keandre Miller. Those are two fantastic offensive defensemen. But if you can throw Gustafson on there too, he's just as good as any of those forwards you throw in your second unit.
Yeah. And if you can get 55 something points out of him on
Yep.
a regular basis, you're absolutely cooking as far as a fantasy perspective is concerned, because
Yep.
nobody's really paying attention to him as far as a high-end scoring defenseman is concerned. But if you watch and you're paying attention to where he's playing, how he's being deployed, he's an absolute fantasy asset right now and in the future, even after Fox comes back.
Yep.
My last one,
Yep.
bigger name, or at least a more high profile team, I have Charlie Coyle, because he is hot, hot, hot right now. He's got 7 points in his last 5 games, and he's just thriving in his top 6 role. What's fantastic about him, as far as a fantasy perspective is concerned, yes, he is a pure center, but his roster rate right now is not high at all. 29%
Wow.
on Yahoo right now. He is currently owned in our league, naturally, but in general, he only has a 29% roster rate there. And then I was looking at ESPN, and it was only a 32% roster rate there. So in two of the bigger name fantasy, you know, leagues, people still aren't picking him up for some reason, but he's doing a lot in every aspect. Absolutely is a pickup recommendation. Just do it. Just straight up do it.
Yeah. And Boston's like one of the top teams in the NHL. They're currently tied with the Rangers for first. And I know that Boston's had some issues over the past 3 or 4 games, but they're the Boston Bruins. They bleed the gold and yellow and black. They're always going to find a way to win. It's and Charlie Coyle's the same way. Like he's not somebody that you would ideally want in your top six, but Boston did it, and now he's thriving because that's just what happens in Boston. So anybody that is ever going to get put into the top six there, always have your eye on them. But Charlie Coyle has been doing very, very well lately.
And I have nothing but great things to say about him, but we'll hold it there. As far as trending up teams, there's two that really stand out to me in the Winnipeg Jets and the LA Kings. They're both on 5-game heaters right now. And anytime you notice, it's high profile, it's high scoring, and the goals are fairly low against as well. So it makes their goaltending valuable. If you have goal scoring options on either team, pick them up. If there is any form of goaltending that you can get out of either of them, for some reason, Hellebuck's available or Talbot's available, then I mean, go for it, because both teams are just ridiculously hot at the moment.
Yeah, and I just want to rub it in your face. You were not high on the Jets coming into the season, so I just wanted to
That's
say
fine.
that.
No, that's fine. I keep saying it. I'm not psychic. I just base it off of my own personal feeling, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. I love seeing when that type of thing happens, because it's like, okay, now I can notice a different trend based off of that scenario, and you get a little smarter in trying to analyze how the team will produce or perform the next time. So you live and you learn. But I was wrong. I fully admit it.
No, but like you weren't wrong to have that opinion. Like that was not an unpopular opinion at all. It was kind of expected. And I feel like I was more with the hot take, saying that I think they're going to be good this year. That was definitely the hot take. So
But it
no
feels
hard
good to be
feelings on that
right,
one
don't
this
it?
time. What was that?
But it feels good to be right, doesn't it?
Oh, it feels amazing to be right. Especially while I'm
Exactly.
sitting down here at 11th in our league.
Where am I? Just real quick, I'll rub that in. Where am
I
I?
don't know. I think you're top 10.
Some top one? Top
Maybe.
one, I think.
Maybe.
Definitely top one. All right. Let's shift it to the negative side. Let's do some downtrend. I have 3.
All right. I got 2, and they're both pretty big names around the NHL.
All right. I'll start off first then, since I got the odd number. First on my list, I got Ryan Strome. Ducks themselves are on a bit of a downtrend, a little bit of a slump, and Strome not producing is definitely an effect of that. It's definitely a bit of a correlation there. He's got 1 point in his last 6 games. The Ducks can pull themselves out of it. I have confidence that they will be okay, but he needs to produce more. That's just an end of story thing.
Yeah, no, and I'll combine them together, but I've got Troy Terry on my list too for all the
Okay.
same reasons.
Yep.
I think the team is starting to miss Zegras' production. He is a very important part of that team, and while they were doing good without him, it was very unsustainable. And so both of these guys are kind of struggling with the lack of offense in that top unit. The team isn't doing horrible, but they're starting to head back down to the basement where we all expected them to be. Yeah, there's not really much else to say about both of them. They're both very capable. I wouldn't drop either. Maybe I would drop Strome if there was a really good pickup if you're in a smaller league, but definitely do not drop Troy Terry. At worst, see what anybody's going to buy low with and get at least an asset from him, but do not drop Troy Terry.
Yeah, if you're going to pick up anybody from the Ducks right now, to me, it would be either Terry, if you can get him for cheap, or if you're feeling bold, you can go for McTavish because he's still playing ridiculously well.
Yeah. Although I feel like right now it would cost too much to get McTavish with too much risk. Not a move I would make, but if you are all about the risk, have at her.
Sometimes you got to make bold moves.
Yeah.
But I'm here for it. Next on my list, I have Jaden Schwartz, kind of in the same boat as Strome. He had a hot streak, and now he's on his slump streak. He's got 1 point in his last 7 games. I think he'll also pull it out of he'll pull out of his slump in a maybe 1 or 2 more games. Not that he's going to go on some ridiculous heater again like he was on, but I think he can get back to being fairly consistent point every other game, maybe goal here, 2-goal game here, because that's what he is to me. He's a good point producing scoring player, 30 goal, 30 assist type guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we talked about him last week or maybe the week before on the uptrends. And we just talked about how like this is kind of out of the blue for him and how good he was doing during that stretch. And now he's back down to kind of normal Jaden Schwartz. And it's not that you should drop him or anything. It's just that he's nothing special right now. You can probably get 25 of them on waivers if you're in an 8-10 man league.
Yeah, it's just what it is at this point. Just be patient with him. Things will come back to. He's back down to earth, so things will come back up a little bit after he's done slumping. I got one left. Who you got left?
My last one is going to be Tyson Barrie, and I hate to say it because I love Tyson Barrie, and especially over the summer at all the weddings that he was at and all the good vibes he was giving off. It was awesome. He seems like a fantastic person, but he's only got 3 points in his last 9 games. He's on the bottom pair in Nashville now. Things just they're not going well for him in Nashville, and I don't know what I don't know what's going to change for him because Nashville does have good defense in front of him. And obviously their coach, Andrew Burnett, he likes his defense and he plays the guys that he trusts, and Tyson Barrie's not one of them right now. So I don't see his ice time coming back up. He is somebody that I would be dropping.
Yeah, but Barrie at different points of the past couple of years has been that, big uptrend player, but then he also has these big downswing times. And right now is definitely one of those. I am also in that 100% drop boat. There's other defensemen right now that are available on your waiver wire. They're going to give you more because Barrie is mostly just points. He's mostly just goals and assists. He's not really going to get much else beyond that. There are other defensemen that are going to be scoring at a similar rate right now and getting you better peripherals. So 100%, I agree, drop. My last one isn't necessarily as much of a he's playing poor as the situation changed, so he has to downtrend naturally. And it's Jonas Johansson.
Yeah.
Vasilevsky's back. He's going to be getting the bulk of the starts. They'll probably ease him in and maybe split games a couple here and there. But if Tampa's confident that Vasilevsky's ready to go, he's going to get 6, 8, 10 games in a row before Johansson really gets another shot to do much. So I'm not necessarily saying you have to drop him, but if you have a backup goalie spot, it's still Tampa. If Tampa is improving, it could be just a free win on that bonus goaltending slot. But right now, with Vasilevsky being back, I don't see a reason to hold on to him religiously if there's other goalie options out there.
Yeah, and I'll add in that Tampa has never been a team to just heavily rely on Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky's not the almighty god in the regular season like he is in the playoffs. So he's usually like 55 to 60 games. So Johansson's probably still going to get a good handful of games headed down the stretch. But like you said, he already missed the first chunk of the season. They're just kind of regaining their form. Obviously, it was a fantastic game for Tampa against Carolina. That's
yeah.
Like
8-2 ain't no joke.
You ate to see it.
That's so lame. That was so lame. I'm not even going to try at that. That was terrible. Take you out of this room just for saying it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just my opinion on Johansson. As far as downtrend teams go, we already talked about the Ducks. They're on a slump. They lost their last 4 games. And then the only other one that I kind of noticed was the Devils. Yeah, they slapped Buffalo around 7-2, but otherwise they were slumping pretty heavily before that. They'll eventually find their way back to the uptrend, but as of right now, it might be tough to justify doing a lot with their depth, and the goaltending hasn't been great in New Jersey either.
Yeah, they're going to come back, especially with Hischier back. They're in a much better position, but right now they have been kind of putting up a few stinkers lately.
But they'll even it out. I have confidence. I wouldn't lose faith in New Jersey just yet. I think they got to figure it out. Everything will be okay.
Yep.
That's all I got. You got any other ones you want to throw into the mix?
No, I think that's kind of all I have, and it was nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to this week's episode of Fantasy Forecheck. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your preferred listening channel, as well as the Hockey Writers podcast and YouTube pages, where you can find anything and everything else hockey related. You can always follow me on Twitter at Strozyk67.
And I'm there at Jacob Billington.
You can feel free to drop us a like, leave a comment. We'll keep you up to date on all things fantasy throughout the year. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time.